All right. Good morning, Liz. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. First question I will ask you, who do you have taking it all March Madness?
Oh,
Women's and men's.
yeah. Women's, I'm going with South Carolina. Dawn Staley, is just,
Okay.
and her team are phenomenal. And I haven't actually decided yet on the men's side, to be honest with you. Um, so I don't know. To be determined by before I have to submit my bracket.
Yeah,
Who
I
do you
think
have?
I have Iowa on the women's.
Uh-huh.
I, I just think Caitlin Clark's just too much fun, and it I like to root for her.
Yeah.
Um,
I saw her play this year. In person. She's just phenomenal.
yeah, my wife and I both have Iowa because I'm like, I don't want to watch a game and not be able to cheer for, like, I don't want to feel like pain when she does well.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool what she's done for the sport. And then for the men, UConn, which I feel like is
Yeah.
as a better, I don't feel great about picking them because everyone picks them. So I feel
Yeah.
like, you get more value from picking anyone else, but um I saw Nate Silver, his analysis was like there's never been a better favorite to pick or something.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. I mean, whatever we pick, I think there's gonna be some 3 seed or 2 seed that loses. There's gonna be some 8 seed that makes it to the final four or something, and we'll all look
Yeah.
silly. But for now,
Yeah.
my bracket's perfect.
And so is my non-existent bracket for the next few hours. So
Well, best of luck to you.
yeah,
So,
you too.
um, wanted to talk today about hiring our heroes and help followers understand exactly what the program is. I think there's a lot of confusion about what is hiring our heroes, what is career skills programs, or what are career skill programs, um, who runs what. A lot of people want to understand, what opportunities do these programs provide. So maybe, would be interesting to hear your background first, and then just kind of an overview and a pitch of what hiring our heroes does at the Department of Commerce at a federal level.
Yeah. Uh, Great questions there, and certainly happy to lay out the landscape and how we function. I think in terms of my background, it's probably one of the most nonlinear backgrounds that's out there, but certainly indicative of the way the workforce has evolved over time. So the first for over a decade, I was a college basketball coach. My husband is still in the Army, so we're about 20 years into this, and at one point moved 7 times in 9 years. So even if I was Dawn Staley, it probably would have been difficult to maintain that career at the economic level that would impact our family, certainly in a positive way. But wonderful experiences, great opportunities to coach good human beings, and lots of leadership lessons learned in it. When we moved back from Germany several years ago, I ended up reaching out to a friend who was at the Chamber of Commerce at Hiring Our Heroes, just for help to try and figure out how to create a career shift at the age of 40. So that was super fun. And she actually said, "Hey, we have a great opportunity here at Hiring Our Heroes." So a lifetime ago, came into Hiring Our Heroes at the lowest paid position in the entire organization, and was really fortunate just to work my way up, and eventually left to go be CEO of an ed tech company and lived the fun life of diligence and acquisition by private equity, and um, all the fun things that you folks listening are probably learning in their classrooms. And then figured, what is it that I love to do? And called Eric at Hiring Our Heroes and said, I love this work. I'd love to come back if there's a role for me. And came back a year ago. So uh, really short version of a nonlinear career, and still figuring it out as I go.
Yeah, I think I've always been impressed when Patrick Murphy introduced me to your background. He's like, yeah, Liz O'Brien. He's like, she could fit on honestly any panel that we could ever do, like sports, entertainment, tech, federal. And he's like, and she could speak, well to any of these. So I think that probably really helps when now that you're at hiring our heroes. I think you have a view of career transitions, people I think get very stuck on, this next move will limit everything that I do after. And I think as your path has proven, that's not always the case, right? There's always different options and different ways to make things happen. Um, so could you just give an overview of what is hiring our heroes, and how is it different, or how does it nest into the overall SkillBridge / career skills program that people in the military have the option to do upon transitioning out?
Yeah. So we are a nationwide nonprofit that's housed at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And our mission is to connect the military community, right? Service members, military spouses, veterans with American business. And ultimate goal is to create economic opportunity. And in parallel to that, a really strong and diversified workforce. We were created in 2011 and launched because the veteran unemployment crisis was through the roof. And what we realized, I want to say we did 800 just hiring events in the first 2 years in communities all across the country, but we were outside of the gates. And so as we started to see the veteran unemployment numbers shift around 2014, we felt like we had to get left of transition and bring our events onto installations. And so we worked through that process. And around that same time, DoD was launching SkillBridge. And so to be clear, SkillBridge is housed in the CMTO's office, right? Civilian Military Transition Office, right? We are an integrator, an implementer of SkillBridge, right? And so I think it's important to know that our overarching umbrella is much bigger than just SkillBridge. We have hiring events, we have programs for military spouses, and then we have SkillBridge, right? And so our mission, the first year we launched, we put 75 people through, and that was in large part to this then Colonel Chuck Hodges, who was at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and said, hey, we want to be the first to pilot this. We want to open our gates. We want to bring companies onto our installations, when kind of the rest of the country and installations was figuring out, do we actually let this come onto our installations and let employers on? And he threw those gates open. So that first year we put 75 folks through. And since then, it's only grown. So companies can come to us instead of navigating individually. It's on the company side, they have to go through CMTO's office, file paperwork. It can be a lengthy process. We have the ability under our HOH umbrella to bring companies on. So we're doing the vetting for CMTO's office. And then we're also vetting those companies, making sure that they're good fits. They actually have jobs available. And then in parallel to that, we have built a pipeline for, sorry, my dog is really happy that we're on today. Go outside, go. And then we are funneling transitioning service members into that pipeline. And so right now we're projected probably to put through about 3,000 transitioning service members this year. So remember, just want to remind everyone, SkillBridge is an authority of the Department of Defense. We are simply an integrator. We are the largest integrator in the country for SkillBridge. And at this point, have probably 800, well, we'll put through 900 fellows this first cohort, and probably have 800 to 1,000 companies that on a rolling basis are participating in our SkillBridge.
Wow, that's really cool. I also think it's worth noting what you talked about with military spouses. I think that's a big piece. I do want to dive into kind of the profile of veterans and how you can serve veterans, as well as those people. We've had a lot of people ask about, if I have a company that wants an internship, or I want to use Hiring Our Heroes, what does that look like? What are the expectations? But first, could you maybe speak to how you help mil spouses? For those watching that, I have a spouse that moved around with me. You moved around with your spouse. It makes things very difficult. And I think that there's, it's great to have these opportunities. So what ways can military spouses get involved with Hiring Our Heroes?
Yeah, really important question, because we know military spouses need different services than transitioning service members and veterans. And we also recognized years ago they needed their own standalone hiring event. So our military spouse program has several components to it. You'll see where we're hosting military spouse specific hiring events. Some are on installations, some are outside installation gates. And then in parallel to that, we have a 2-day professional development program called Amplify. It's our fastest growing program at this time. And so really we're finding military spouses are in different stages of career readiness. And so we can funnel them into Amplify and say, oh, hey, Liz, you're 32 years old. You were a college basketball coach and you woke up and realized this is no longer realistic. And these are the professional development pieces you have to work through. One of those probably being at the time learning to speak in longer sentences than if I was in a timeout, right? Like transitioning into corporate speak. But so we'll put them through 2 days of the Amplify programming. Also 18 to 24-year-olds have different needs than a 32-year-old at the time. So making sure that we are, before military spouses even get in the pipeline and interact with an employer, that we've prepped them and that they are career ready. And then in parallel to that, we also have a partnership with Department of Defense for active duty military spouses. So Congress allocated $5 million for a program that mimics SkillBridge, but it's for active duty military spouses. So we can also take a military spouse, match them with a company, place them into a fellowship, and they go to work for 3 months with that company. Right now we have an 85% offer rate, and about 80% of the jobs are remote, right? And so when you talk about creating a pathway of remote and portable jobs for a population that's 21% unemployed, we're really happy with the results that we're seeing around this pilot program.
So for military spouses, if someone's watching that is a spouse or has a spouse that's trying to look for jobs, is there a profile? I mean, do you have to be a recent graduate? Do you have to be someone that has a college degree? Is it limited to certain industries? And how would you go? I mean, is there a website? Is there an office or a number to call? How would you get involved? With
head on over to hiringourheroes.org. We do not limit. So because we're a nonprofit, we don't have to follow, our job is to fill gaps from the Department of Defense side where they have less flexibility. So for us, a military spouse is anyone whose career has been impacted by their partner's service to this country. So we will serve active duty spouses, veteran, National Guard, reserve, divorced spouses, you name it, right? Like we have worked to create a really inclusive environment for military spouses at large. So we do have programs that, anything that's dictated by the Department of Defense has to be active duty, has to be an ID card holder. But the rest of our programming is really flexible and inclusive.
Okay, that's awesome. We'll include that in the show notes for people that want to get their spouses involved, or if there's a spouse that might be watching this, that wants to head over there. For vets that are interested, that are thinking, I'm transitioning out, this is probably a population that's maybe a year to 18 months out. That's normally when I tell people then to start thinking about their transition, because if you try to go to Hiring Our Heroes and your ETS date is in 2 months, it's going to be very difficult. Probably not doable. But for those vets that are thinking, hey, 2 years, 18 months, maybe a year out, who is kind of the ideal candidate that you're looking for? Is this someone that's looking for full-time employment? Are these part-time internships that, for someone that might be going to an MBA or law school or an undergrad? I mean, for several, for if you're an enlisted soldier getting out to your undergraduate degree, what kind of profiles are you looking for? And is there an application, or do you take anyone that wants to come and apply, and how does that matching go?
Yeah, we definitely have an application process. We want to make sure that we are connecting transitioning service members with employers that are fitting their skill set. And so there's a few pieces. One, you have to go and get approval by your commands. And I want to be clear, we don't influence the outcome of approval for commands. I'm sure everybody listening has seen that there has been some shifts and some headwinds around command approval across branches. And so our approach is inclusive. We don't care if you're junior enlisted, if you're senior, right? We will, if you have approval from your command, we're going to, and you meet the other application wickets. Big piece of it is the command approval, and then making sure that we are matching you with the right organization and right company. But that is a process. To your point, you want to start that process 18 to 24 months out. Everybody's transitioning at some point. So this isn't an indicator that you're not committed to your military service or that you're not focused on it. Instead, it's ensuring that you are set up for the next stage of your life, which if you think about it, right, like whether you serve 5 years, 20 years, when you transition out, your next stage within the community that you go back to is going to be far longer probably than any time in service. And so it's really important to make sure that you are setting yourself up and your family up for that transition. So now if you are going to go to be, if you're going to enroll in school, whether you're undergrad or you are going to pursue your MBA, there is still value in going to nest in a company, right? So if you're going to go get your MBA and you want to nest in a portfolio company, right? Like TFX Capital down in North Carolina does a great job of this. They host veteran service members that are going to go pursue their MBA so that they can spend 3 to 6 months kind of seeing what it's like, all the different portfolio companies, right? So there's ways to nest into whatever industry you're interested in. And also we have a broad depth and breadth of companies. So we've always had corporate fellowship program, which was primarily at the time, or still serves, folks with bachelor's degrees and that are pushing into corporate America. But what we know also is that across the country, we've seen a shift in how companies do business as well. And there's an increasing demand for skills-based and skills trades hiring. So we now have a skills-based fellowship. So if you want to, while you were in service and you pursued cyber or IT, and you have a ton of certificates, or you want to push into to be a lineman, or you want to push into construction, we have pathways for that now under our skills-based fellowship as well. And so both of those obviously fall under CSP and the DoD authority.
All right. So one question I think a lot of people have is, how do these offers translate to, or how do these internships rather translate to employment? Are a lot of companies looking to hire people from Hiring Our Heroes? Are they looking at it, as a training program, or how should veterans approach, internships with Hiring Our Heroes?
Yeah, great question, Wyatt. And I want to be clear. So as transitioning service members are feeding into our pipeline, while we're vetting them, we're also vetting these companies. And so what's really important to us is, listen, there's no guarantee of employment, of course, but these companies have to commit to us that there is a job open that the transitioning service member is going to have an opportunity to compete with, right? And so this process of spending 3 months with a company, one, it allows them to see, are you a good fit? And that's where they find tremendous value, because when you think about recruiting, retention, the amount of money companies invest into just hiring one person, and then, say 90 days into it, it doesn't work out, right? Like that immediately puts them at a cost deficit. And so for them, the business case of this is they have a chance to really figure out, is this person the right fit? On the other side of that, the service member also has that opportunity to figure out, right? Maybe you've been a cyber person in the Army, and you think you want to go work for whatever cyber company. And then you get there and you think, oh, this actually isn't the right fit for me. And it allows you to pivot during that 3 months. But by and large, we find that those companies that we match transitioning service members with, we have a 91% offer rate. Whether you decide to take it or not, really is depending on if it's a service member or not. So, and again, this is we're 7 or 8 years into this, right? So we've had a lot of time to figure out best practices, pathways, what's right, what doesn't work. And so we have a really refined machine right now that, but what is important to us is, listen, we want to ensure that transitioning service members have an opportunity to go to work, right?
Yeah, that offer rate's pretty awesome, especially given how difficult it is, even from an MBA program here at Wharton, the amount of time and effort you have to put in and rejections you have to sift through, veteran or not. I mean, the civilian labor market's just a very, very tough place to be, and having access to something that can reduce the number of, reduce the chance of failure, I think is huge. For those that are applying, do you apply to Hiring Our Heroes and indicate, interest do you apply to individual jobs? And is there some help from you all to help people kind of figure out, hey, maybe this company, this industry is the best fit for you? How does that matching system and interview?
Yep. So there's a few pieces to a successful pathway, right? So one, we host several webinars through our virtual events where you can learn more about IT or construction or different industries that are out there. What if you're somebody that's transitioning and you don't want to stay in your MOS, or you don't want to stay in the branch that you were in, right? How do you do that kind of career exploration? So you can do that through some of our virtual engagements, some of our in-person events. Two, you are welcome to, if you know that you want to go work at one of our great partners like an Amazon or a Booz Allen, et cetera, you can say, hey, I found this great match or this job that I'm interested in. You can establish that relationship with them and bring us that opportunity. If they're not currently an employer partner, we'll make sure that we get them onboarded. And so that's another pathway. And then third opportunity is you can go through the matching process, right? You can say, I want to be a machine, I want to operate heavy machinery in Iowa, or I want to go work in a space company in California, right? And so we have a matching system like Tinder, swipe left, swipe right until you find the right match. And then you go forward from there. So it does work really well if you know what industry you want to go into, if you know what company, right? Like the more we can narrow it down, a higher rate of success, certainly, but there is an opportunity, of course, to be matched as well if you're really unclear about what company you want to go to. But I would also encourage people to do kind of that evaluation and process to, what is most important to you, right? If obviously if you're going to get your MBA, what is that pathway to consulting, and is there a relationship that you can establish through this fellowship, right? Can you embed with a McKinsey or whoever as you
Yeah.
go through this process so that they know who you are? To your point, right? It's a really complex labor market on the other side. So if you can at least establish that relationship, that maybe then, a year later, 2 years later leads to that internship, et cetera. There's utility in it.
And for those vets that might be watching saying, I don't know what I want to do, right? I'm a tank mechanic, or I am an infantryman, or a logistics specialist. And I mean, if you're an infantry officer or an 11 Bravo, like, I guess absent private security or, law enforcement, there's no translatable job.
Yeah.
And they're saying, I don't have a clue what kind of industry I want, what roles I want. I don't know the difference between a product manager and a revenue, specialist. Is there some ways, besides those webinars, as you go through that matching process, to help figure out, hey, you're interested in these things, you have these skills, maybe this industry, maybe these areas might be a best fit?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a great ambassador that works for us besides Patrick Murphy, who, did I mention to you the first time when he was undersecretary and I went to visit him at the Pentagon and didn't know him well, I had to do pull-ups just to get in the office. So we could put that to the
Yeah,
side for
I met him.
another
I met
time,
him
but
when I was a cadet at West Point. Same
yeah,
thing. He challenged all of us to a pull-up contest.
yeah. But did you win?
One of them won, but we
Uh-huh.
we we put forward. There was a group of like 20 of us, and we put forward our best person. And they did beat him, but it was like an NCAA gymnast, right?
Yeah,
So Patrick was like, "Oh, I should have like felt out the crowd before I challenged someone."
I love
But he
it.
he still did a bunch. I mean, he
Yeah.
he was like, "Hey, I'll put my best foot forward."
That's fantastic. So we have another ambassador, Dakota Meyer, who works with us, and he was in the Marine Corps and he was a sniper, right? And he talks about all the time when I went to transition out, how do you take being a sniper and translate that into skills, right? To your point, there's nothing on the other side really besides private security that values sniper skills. But our program managers, right? We have program managers in about 40 locations around the country. So wherever you match to, that program manager will do a really good job of saying, having a discussion with you and helping you find what that right pathway looks like. And it turns out there's a lot of great skills that you have as a sniper, right? Like nobody wakes up and is just a great sniper. It's that scaffolding that goes behind it and all of the steps that actually make you a great sniper. And so being able to translate those skills, one, right? And our
Right.
program managers can help you do that and find that pathway around what right looks like as you start to the process of transition. And, I also think it's really hard to know what you want to do when you grow up, right? I'm 50 years old. I'm still figuring it out, right? Like I love my job. I love my mission. But you're always thinking about how do I continue to evolve? How do I continue to learn? And I think the great part about the workforce of today is that continued path of growth. Like we're never going to stop learning in the environment that we're in, so that you can stay competitive.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best pieces of something like hiring our heroes is for those of us, like you said, I mean, I think everyone thinks, oh man, I'm gonna go transition out. I'm gonna know exactly what I want to do. And the more people I talk to that are alumni from MBA programs that went into, directly into different sectors, the consensus is like, oh yeah, I'm not really sure. Like, I'm 10 years out of the military. Maybe I'll go do this next, or like maybe I'll, this is interesting to me. And the amount of pivots and the amount of time that people spend saying, yeah, like I haven't quite figured this out yet. Um, I think is really important for people to understand. But having a kind of a scaffolding like hiring our heroes, I think can be super beneficial, especially when you look at something like that offer rate. Um, in terms of
Yeah.
timing, are there, you talk about, people become fellows, and is there certain timing that people need to be aware of as they're planning their exit and their transition? Um, is there timing that people need to make sure that they meet? This is kind of gets back to the point of don't contact hiring our heroes 3 months before your
Yeah.
ETS date. Is there timing that people need to meet? You're working with corporate partners who are trying to juggle a lot of things and have been, have taken a chance, quite frankly, on a lot of veterans. What is kind of the timing issues that veterans need to be aware of as they're planning their transition?
Yeah. And so when people go over to hiringourheroes.org and you click on the fellows drop down, we run 3 cohorts a year. So you'll be able to see when those dates are, but typically January, May, and September. Right. And to your point, it is really important to be ahead of it, because I can't overshare enough of how complex it is for these companies to be working backwards to forecast on a job that they're going to have. And so that job kind of has to be on the books, and they're working backwards. And so the job that Booz Allen Hamilton might have in that first January cohort may not be the same jobs that they have available in that September cohort. And so so think about, you want to be in that pipeline. So if you're going to go into the January cohort, really by August of the previous year, you want to make sure you're pursuing your command approvals. You want to make sure that you're starting to narrow, that you have a pathway for which companies you potentially want to be matched with. Because September, October, November, those companies that are going to host people in that January cohort, they're working through the matching process, right? They're
Right.
having right. We're having interviews, then we're putting candidates forward. They're having interviews. So it's probably a 3 to 4 month process before the cohort date.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the, like I was saying, one of the reasons that people really need to figure out, hey, what does my timeline look like? And don't do that, 4 to 6 months out. Get in contact with you all as soon as you can, because like you said, these are companies that are looking at this as possibly hiring someone full time, and companies can't drop the kind of money that's needed to hire someone without, a little bit of notice. For companies, shifting to the idea that a lot of these companies that are signing up get a benefit. First, what is the benefit for a company that might want to get on board, and then after that, I think we'll probably go into what do you do if you want to get on board. But first, what reasons would a company have for setting up hiring our heroes and bringing on fellows?
Yeah. One, we're giving them tremendous access to a pipeline of phenomenal talent, right? These are folks that know how to operate in adverse circumstances, operate in the realm of being uncomfortable, and have these cross-cultural competencies that a regular civilian doesn't bring to the workforce. So that's one piece. You are instantaneously making their workforce, in theory, better, right? Stronger, better, faster. Secondary to that, they have an opportunity to, we talked about this earlier, right? They're saving on recruiting costs, right? We don't charge companies to partner
Yeah,
with us,
huge.
right? It's all free and clear. So,
Really,
um,
that's a huge piece. I think people a lot of times think, oh, this is going to be a headhunting fee, right? Um,
no,
that's huge. I mean, for a company to be able to have access to headhunting effectively, a filter, and not have to, I mean, basically onboard someone for free. I mean, the opportunity cost there is probably 40 to $50,000. You know, when you think about training costs, recruiting costs, it's just pure salary benefits.
yeah.
Because if you're a company, you don't have to pay any salary. You're not paying for healthcare. You're not paying for, the acquisition of that talent. That is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a cost that can't be understated.
100%. And now if you think, we know like 98, 99% of businesses in America are small, medium-sized businesses, right? And so think about the immediate impact you can make on a small, medium-sized business. We talk a lot about, of course, you always see big brands, big businesses out there that people are attracted to, but there is a tremendous opportunity, as you're transitioning out to nest and embed in small and medium-sized businesses where you might be able to achieve a higher level of integration into the company than maybe you would at a larger company. And so that's part of the process as well as you figure out what's right for you. But for those companies that are small to medium size, that impact, that cost savings is tremendous. So to be clear and just to reiterate, we do not charge companies to participate. And if you are hearing of orgs that are charging companies to participate in SkillBridge, which is a DoD authority, and not meant to be utilized to make money, that should be a red flag for people, right? I've
Yeah,
asked
if there's
questions.
yeah, we've had that before. There are organizations out there that are trying to get companies to pay them to find SkillBridge um help. And to that, I would say, obviously come to you, come to Hiring Our Heroes, because that's huge. I think a lot of people just assume there's no way on earth that that a company would do this and not be charging the company, because that's how headhunting, that's how the world works, right? Is
Right.
labor is a good, you pay for the labor. I mean, headhunting can be a very expensive endeavor. Normally, most headhunters are charging 15 to 20% of the first year salary. So to be able to do that for free, I think that makes this program even more enticing
Yeah.
than it already was.
And talking about the value of the veteran or transitioning service member pipeline, 2008, we saw the financial crisis, right? And families stopped having as many children, right? And those kids are about to turn 18. And then on the other side, we have thousands and thousands of baby boomers that are retiring every year. So in a year, you think we have a complex labor market right now. In a year and 2 years from now, it is going to be a wild job market because there's not going to be enough talent to fill the pipelines of American businesses, right? And so, one, this is in theory good for our transitioning service members, our MBA students, right? There should be a premium on that talent that's coming. But for us, SkillBridge becomes all the more important in ensuring the companies that we're partnering with have access to this pipeline because it is going to be an intense labor market probably in about a year to year and a half.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. As rates start to come down, who knows when that'll be? I think everyone thought that it would
Sarah?
be a month or two ago, and but I think it will start to go down, right? I don't think we're not permanently going to be seeing 4 to 5% Fed funds rates, and that'll really make it a lot cheaper for companies to hire, to expand, to invest. For companies that have said, we've had a couple people say, look, I've tried to get approved. I'm not really totally sure on the process. If there's someone that thinks that they want to utilize Hiring Our Heroes, what's the best way to make that happen?
Yeah, you guys, folks can email me, eobrien@uschamber.com. You'll tell me what region you're in, and I'll connect you to that program manager.
Okay,
And
easy as
again,
that.
the approval process is you have to start with your command, of course, right? You can do both in parallel. You can apply to our program, but you won't get final approval from us until you have that command approval.
And what about if you're an employer? So if sit reps is
Yeah.
not at the time looking for hiring our heroes. But if we were, how would we apply and get approved? You
Yep.
talked about, obviously you need to have a job open. This isn't 6 month free labor for companies, but how would how would I actually get listed so that I could start hiring veterans
Yeah,
or
and
or
you should go through the approval process before you need to hire, right? Like in an ideal world. So you can head over to
right.
hiringourheroes.org. Yep, click on the fellowships. It's super easy. It'll direct you to a link where you go through an application process, and it funnels right to our program manager. So if you're based out of Florida or you're based out of Texas, it'll get routed, and then they'll call and work through some clarifying questions with the company. So as long as they are a company in good standing, best faith, and to be clear, if we find somebody to be a bad actor after approval, then they'll also be removed, right? So you have to maintain that good standing and commitment to hiring.
Right. If you find that there's a 0% offer rate, you won't be maintained.
Yeah, and we may have to work through, if you're going through, and we encourage companies, don't come in and try and hire 235 fellows in the first round, right? It's really important, like as you are coming into this
Right.
ecosystem, set your company up for success, maybe model 1 or 2 in that first cohort, and take those lessons learned and best practices, right? We won't allow, to be honest with you, companies to come in and try and hire 100 fellows at once, right? Like we really want you
Yeah.
to get the good pilot, the good model, figure out what works, because what might work at a sit reps isn't going to work at a U.S. Chamber of Commerce, right? And so we
Right.
want to set people up for success. That part's really, really important to us.
What issues do you normally see that keep, besides trying to have kind of an over optimistic view of hiring, what other issues come up that typically make it difficult for employers to get approved for hiring our heroes?
We need to make one of the I think there's some internal pieces that companies really have to run through. And so, right, relating back to the Standards of Labor Act, there is an education piece that has to occur within your company, right? So lawyers will immediately raise their hand and say, we can't have unpaid labor in our organization, right? And DOL came out with we can direct you to that if you need it for your company, guidance several years ago that, hey, this is fair and it is okay under the Fair Labor Standard Act, right? But you have to run through the wickets. First, we want to make sure your company is fully bought in, and that you've run through the process. And so we've seen companies, especially financial institutions, it can take them a year to get all of the approval processes in place, between lawyers and leadership, et cetera. So I think, one, if you're a small business owner and you own the company and you can make those decisions very quickly, no problem. If you are just hired on at a major organization to lead the military efforts, you're going to have some wickets that you have to work through, and know that there's some bureaucracy involved. The good news is we have all of the answers. We have all the best practices. We have all the pieces that we can provide your company as you maybe have to navigate some hurdles and roadblocks. But it's not like, hey, you're hired to run this today and that tomorrow, a large size company is going to be probably ready to go on it.
Yeah. Well, is there any reason that someone wouldn't want to, if they're a transitioning veteran, is there a profile or someone that you would say, look, you might not be the best candidate for hiring our heroes, or maybe there's a different option? Just, for those watching that, I don't know of any kind of profile. I think you have a pretty wide variety of jobs and a broad exposure. And like you said, there's even jobs for people that aren't looking for a full-time, that might be looking at, weighing options at the end. But is there a profile of someone that might not be the best fit for hiring our heroes on a candidate side?
If you don't have command approval, definitely not a good fit. But in terms of a
Sure.
persona, no, it would be, and we have folks that come into our pipeline for SkillBridge, and all of the sudden they're direct hires. So before they even get into the SkillBridge, the company's decided, hey, you did a great job vetting, et cetera, and we're going to put you to work, next week. And so, they may not even get into that pipeline. And then I think it's we also, I'd say about 5% of the folks that come through or start the process end up deciding to stay in the military. So there's a slight piece of retention where all of a sudden they were thinking that this is what they wanted to do and realized they wanted to still continue to serve. And that's okay,
Yeah.
right? Like you can, as long as you
Yeah,
haven't
I think
dropped your separation papers, etc., you can work
yeah,
backwards.
I think people in general need to realize that the Army included, employers are not going to be, more loyal to you than you normally are to them. Um, right. So I I will tell people, this. I was talking to someone the other day that was like, oh, my CSP offered me a full-time job. I'm going to this MBA program. And originally, we kind of said this will be a thing that I'll end. What should I do? And I was like, well, let's look at the offer. Like, who knows? Maybe it's a really, really good offer and you could do a
Yeah.
part-time program. And looked at it and I said, that's not a great offer for what you could have in the future. And he's like, well, what will they think? And I was like, they'll think, hey, you didn't accept our offer, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty typical in the labor market. You need to look out for yourself before you look out for the interests of the Army, the company. You and your family should always come first, right? And every employer, even if they're a bit frustrated, they will find someone, the next day. And if they can't, then you probably shouldn't have stayed. If they can't find someone to fill your role, it probably wasn't a good role to begin with. So, always be looking out for yourself. But
And that's a
anyway,
hard
Liz,
shift,
thank you
Wyatt,
so
right?
much for.
Isn't that that's a hard shift,
Sorry,
I
yeah, go
think.
ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. I know we're a little bit delayed. I think that's a hard shift oftentimes for transitioning service members and veterans, right? Like that kind of I mentality, let me look out for my family first, because you're so built for that team mentality first. And I think, what you just
Yeah.
said, championing that, sharing it, like it's okay to set your family and yourself up for future success. By taking
Yeah.
that outlook. So thank you for flagging that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's weird coming from, in the military, there's the incentive pay structure, doesn't exist. And everything is done, thinking of your soldiers, thinking of your peers. And, especially if you've ever been deployed or if you've ever been in an environment where you depend on someone else for, your survival, yes, it can become very ingrained in you that, hey, you don't quit on your team, right? You're here for this period. But everyone does leave the military, right? The Army goes rolling along, as we said, and for other branches, same thing. And certainly civilian employment, right? The civilian employers will, they will promote and they will also, lay off. And you need to make sure that you are setting yourself up. And most, if an employer doesn't look at an offer that you have, or an opportunity that's better for you and say, I understand, right? I wish you'd stay. If they try to, talk you out of doing something that's in your best interest, it's probably not an employer. What I've found is most people, as I've had offers at my MBA program, and I've turned them down, and I've explained why. Every one of those employers has said, "Oh, wow, yeah, that's a really good offer. Like, congratulations. Let us know in the future if you're interested in something else." So most people kind of realize, what's in your best interest and will not begrudge you for looking to do something that's a better opportunity.
100%.
So, all right, Liz, you already shared your email. You said E. O'Brien at
Yep.
US Chamber.
Yep. And you can find me on LinkedIn too, Elizabeth L.
Okay.
O'Brien.
And it's
listen,
US
we are
Chamber dot
Oh, yeah.
uschamber.gov, right? E.
Nope,
O'Brien at US.
no. .com.
.com. Okay.
Yeah.
E. O'Brien at uschamber.com. Okay.
Yep. And then I'm on LinkedIn. And listen, we are not the one stop. If we feel like we can't serve somebody or get them into the right lane, we're going to hand them off to the next right best organization. So for us, this is a big tent in ensuring everybody's successful in their transition.
For sure. All right, Liz. Well, have a wonderful week. Best of luck, finishing your brackets, and I hope you win whatever pools you're going to enter. I think we're going to share a sit reps pool today for people to join. So yeah, so people, we're gonna start launching some swag. So anyone that wins will get like $100 of free swag. We're redesigning our logo. So we'll share that link. Hopefully, you can come and prove that, your career experience makes you a better predictor.
I never win. Just to set it for the record, I haven't won since 1993 when I was in college and won a bracket then. And it's just been a terrible losing streak. But Wyatt, I can't thank you and Kyle enough for the work you guys do through Sit Reps. It's been fantastic to watch the platform grow. It's been really humbling to watch how you have positive influence, especially on our MBA student veterans, and how you're making our ecosystem a better place. So appreciate what you guys do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Liz. And we'll talk to you again, hopefully. Lots of
Okay.
questions from people.
Catch you later.